Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Now before we get started, a quick information here. This is a full disclosure. This EVE Talk is actually made a little bit earlier than I would normally do so because, well, some family obligations are popping up on the day and time, Saturday, before downtime, where I normally make EVE Talk, and as a result, I don't want to miss making an EVE Talk for you guys. So this is actually the evening before EVE Talk comes out that we're gonna take a look at the state of the market in EVE Online. It's really my only option, unfortunately. I would love to give you guys information that's closer to what you will encounter in Jita when you take a look at EVE Talk, but I have no other choice. As always, we'll take a quick look at the New Eden store. There is not much to say here. We do still have those skins that were previously only available on the Chinese server that are front and center on the marketplace here in the New Eden store. They look pretty damn cool. You also have some nice bundles with the strategic cruisers, but no special sales or anything all too special to report this week in the New Eden store. On the general EVE news front, well, we have the new launcher. I personally don't mind, except that I don't fully trust having stickied my account in the launcher, so I keep logging in every single time, which I think is like an extra click compared to the previous one, but overall, I mean, the launcher, as long as it gets me in the game, I'm all good with it. And then of course we have a little bit of information on the February release. Looks to me like it's mostly maintenance yet again, with some small little improvements coming to the game. You can definitely read up on that, and if you want to take a look and test it as well, I think all of that stuff is up on CC for you to check out. So we are here for that market, of course. As always, we are going to start with some plex and stuff. That's going to be at 2 minutes 10. And let's see what is happening here. As always, we'll start with plex in Jita, just below 3.8 million for the sellers and just below 3.7 million for the buyers. If we go to the player-owned trade hubs, right above 3.7 million for the buyers, so still a little bit of difference between the player trade hubs, mostly in perimeter and Jita 4.4 at the moment. And if we look at the price history, we are basically stalling a little bit at a 1-year high point. Plex is still extremely expensive in the game at the moment. I think I tried to sell 500 plex just to take a look at my own local market and to see if that works out, and it's more than 1.8 billion ISK at the moment for 30 days game time. I think that is definitely amongst the highest it's ever been for people that want to plex their account through general gameplay. So inflation is still a factor, but there are, I think, a lot of other factors that are increasing the price for plex as well, including, well, how much it is used for. You've got all the skins, which are, you know, always front and center. CSB does put out lots and lots of skills for people to purchase, and I have to be honest, I don't fork out real money for my skins, like the police skin for the Ishtar, but I go into my plex vault and I just pay them from there, which is bound to be more demand for plex and thus higher prices. Yet again, bad news for people that are trying to play EVE Online for free. Of course, they have to do lots more grinding to get all that ISK together in order to pay for their sub. Next up, we have the multiple pallet train certificates, showing that, well, the increases are probably not over just yet. This one is working its way to yet another 1-year high to 1.7 billion ISK at this point, and in fact the sellers are coming in at almost 1.8 billion ISK for multiple pallet train certificates. Well, I just told you guys, if you want to buy 500 plex, you lose more than 1.8 billion, so this is pretty damn normal. Buyers are just below 1.7 billion ISK, but look at that upwards pressure. It's just the name of the game right now. You're paying a lot for plex and plex related items at the moment. Skill extractors, of course, following the plex pattern very closely, also plateauing a little bit at a 1-year high point, but you can also see the final data point for today so far, which, well, contrary to most ETH talks is actually later on the day, and I think it's a more normal price that we're seeing here is actually at the 1-year high point at around 420 million. Is 417 million for the sellers, 407 million for the buyers. Again, skill extractors very expensive as well. Then we have the skill injectors. Let's take a look at that. And well, after a little bit of a relapse, well, that increase, it must be said, from November and December up to the start of January was very sharp. A massive increase to yet another 1-year high point. Well, that can't last forever, so we had a bit of a dip, but look where we are right now yet again at that 870 million ISK mark, very close to that 1-year high point. We are basically there again as well on the large skill injectors. 870 million for the sellers, just below that, and then the buyers coming in at 856 million ISK. Yeah, if you want a sub, if you want skill points, right now you are paying a lot of ISK for that. Small skill injectors are also plateauing basically at their high points through January and now the start of February. So holding very strongly at a price just below 180 million ISK, 175 for some sellers in the player on trade hubs, and then buyers coming in at just below 169 million ISK. Still very, very expensive. Basically the real life market, that's where the ISK is flowing at the moment. We still have the daily alpha injectors, which, well, we know that CCP had this massive sale. You see this typical pattern here, massively increased volumes all of a sudden on the trade volumes of the item, decrease in prices to 1-year low points. But this is recovering quite nicely now. So for the people that did buy, let's say, daily alpha injectors below 40 million ISK, which was definitely possible on the high points of the trading frenzy when CCP came out with their crazy sales, well, you're having a very good time right now, and it's all about timing the market. We're now talking 58 million on the chart. Sellers are coming in at 59 million ISK. If you bought for less than 40 million ISK, you've got your 50% profit. I would say that this is definitely not a bad time to be selling those daily alpha injectors, which you probably have bought 1.5 months ago. I'd say 50% in 1.5 months is not bad at all when it comes to your return on investments. Yeah, that's it for the Plex related stuff. It's all about increasing prices at the moment, and very expensive for people that want to buy any of this stuff, especially when you're using it. That must feel kind of bad. When you're using it as an investment, well, you know, an inflation hedge, eventually the pattern is obvious. We go higher and higher and higher. Inflation is part of the game, but yeah, if you're buying Plex to use them, that does hurt quite a lot when it comes to the ISK wallet. Moving on to the minerals now at 735. We are going to take a look at that, and well, we have to be honest, when ISK is flowing into one market segment, then it usually is not doing so well in the others or in some of the others. And for minerals, of course, that has been the case, you know, because of the Rorcal mining, the slower destruction in nullsec at the moment. Basically, there's too much supply for the market and people don't care about minerals at the moment. They also don't really invest in them. You can see that from time to time when we dip really low, like here, 1-year low point, you do have a small boost in volumes here for people that do take positions, that do make those investments, but it really feels very risky. How long is this going, this situation going to maintain itself? How long will Rorcals remain king undisputed in a nullsec? Will they allow nullsec mining anomalies to just respawn endlessly the way they do now? We don't really know, and the longer it lasts, the lower these prices will actually go. Tritanium is now selling for, let's take a look at, well, the more realistic price are probably GTA44 here, 4.52 ISK for the sellers, coming in with volumes, look at that, 1.9 billion, 2 billion, 2 billion, that's just too much for the market to absorb. So even at these low prices, it's still above 4.5 ISK, so it's still at least somewhat okay for Tritanium, but you're seeing the massive volumes come in here, way more than the market needs, and thus that pressure is just continuing. You can see this slow burn to ever lower prices. Buyers coming in at 445, so that is a very narrow margin, of course, but eventually you can see that on the volumes, 2 billion, mostly on the seller sides, and here you don't really see buyers coming in with more than 1 billion units at the time. They are very careful, and I personally can't blame them. The longer longer this situation maintains itself, well, the lower you're eventually gonna see titanium break through the 4.5 ISK barrier, and then the buyers are just slowly going to edge towards 4 ISK and maybe even below that. And well, it's all about, will there be a nullsec war, or will CCP eventually intervene in the mineral markets? But from my perspective, CCP might just be happy with really cheap Tech 1 stuff. What is of course worrying mostly the players, I think, is the inflation when it comes to the capital and the super capital availability in the game, but that is a balancing act, of course, mostly for CCP to decide on. When it comes to pyrite, we do have a little bit of a comeback, and you can also tell see that same pattern here, reaching a 1-year low point at 3.0 ISK. That is so much lower than even titanium that finally some people said, yeah, maybe that's low enough, let's start investing here. And that has basically pushed that market back towards a 4 ISK, which is, well, still extremely low. Of course, pyrite, historically speaking, has been worth more than titanium, but at least we breathe a little sigh of relief that some comeback is possible. Pyrite had been going down for a year straight, basically. 3.85 ISK for the sellers, 3.78 for the buyers. And then the bad news is, again, looking at the volumes, unless we go down to almost 3.3 ISK, nobody is buying a lot of pyrite, but sellers trying to get rid of their stocks at these slightly higher prices. They come in with 2 billion units, 500 million units, 1 billion units right here, from 397 down to 387. That is just putting pressure on that price again. So I do personally think that this increase is going to be temporary. Another loser in all likeliness when it comes to the minerals, obviously on the 1-year chart you can see from 80 ISK down now to almost 55 ISK on the chart. That is not a great performer. Mexalon, for most of 2018, has actually been the one that has been able to maintain its value, mostly because it is a bottleneck in nullsec. If they mine everything that's available, they lack in Mexalon first, and as a result that could still command a bit of a premium even here in highsec. But now the situation is so dire that even Mexalon is going down in price and remaining at well, 1-year low points pretty much. Mexalon selling now for 57.63, buyers coming in at 55.75. Not a lot of margin again, so we do see that the market, I think, is trying to spot that bottom for the minerals. But if you look at a chart like pyrite, well, it's tried before 4.5, 4 ISK, 3.5 ISK, and then it goes all the way down to 3 ISK. And I think lots of people are a bit skeptical when it comes to investing massively in these minerals. When it comes to the volumes here, well, that's actually maybe a little bit more reasonable, except, well, 500 million units, 200 million units compared to 60 million units and 71 million units on the buyers. It's still 5-6 times more on the seller side. So I would say, yeah, buyers are still very cautious at the moment. For Isogen then, we have that same problem chart starting out at 40 ISK, which is also down from even earlier. And then you can see 35 ISK. Well, let's break straight through that, go down to 30, go down to 25, stay there for a couple of months. So that might look okay, even some people that decide to invest in Isogen at that point. But nope, down to 20, down to 15. And that's when the market said, well, maybe that's slow enough. You can see some investments and then a slow burn up a little bit, but now plateauing and hesitating yet again. 17.51 for the sellers, 16.87 for the buyers. And then you do have here a buyer that is willing to buy 1 billion units, kind of believing in the Isogen market to come back and to not go below 17 ISK. And then the sellers here, 120 million, 160 million ISK. Well, it's definitely more than all the other buy orders, but this one here, that is definitely a pretty aggressive one. One jump out, in fact. Cheetah 4, Moon 4, Caldari Navy. Why the hell is that one jump out? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe it's like a bugged order or something like that. And then we would again be in that same pattern. That is really weird. Couldn't even tell you what the hell is happening there. Next up, we have the Noxium market, and I would say Noxium is this year, or in the last year, I would say, doing what Mexalon has done a little bit before that, managing to maintain its price range of around 300 ISK. Now at the tail end, we've got some bad news, of course, because we did break through that 300 barrier, stuck a little bit at 290, and here at the tail end, look at that, trying to get back up a little bit. So sellers are at 299 ISK, buyers are at 283, 24 million here, look at the buyers, 48 million units. That feels a lot more balanced, and so Noxium right now is actually something a bit of an anomaly in the mineral market, because it hasn't actually lost a lot of value in the last year. If you would be mining in HiSec, I would say focus on Noxium and Mexalon sources. Of course, if you're mining from moons, you've got some extra options as well. For Zydrine, we have that same very bad pattern, of course, with the changes to the refineries and to moon mining. All of that 0.5 system supply has come online, which has basically cratered the price down to 400 ISK. Bit of a comeback at the tail end, but look at the end here. We do have that pressure yet again, selling now for 519 ISK, buyer coming in at 470. Definitely feels like you've got a bit more margin between buyers and sellers. And then you also have those typical volumes right now for those former HiSec minerals. I would say 1.5 billion, 6.7 billion, 1.8 million, million units, 8 million here, 2 million here. Those are the kinds of volumes that you acquire by mining an active moon somewhere in a 0.5 system and bringing that back maybe every week, every 2 weeks or something like that. And so the former domination of nullsec when it comes to Zydrine and Megasite is completely broken. You have a healthier market, you could say, between sellers and buyers, where both of them try to make the price happen. Where formerly it was definitely the sellers that were always dictating the price because of the need to import those Zydrine resources out from nullsec into HiSec in order to trade them here. So that has completely changed in the dynamic. Supply has increased manyfold, safety has increased manyfold as well, being in 0.5 systems, and as a result we have much lower prices here. Megasite in the exact same pattern. Again, nice little comeback to 600 ISK, but look at the pressure. It is just unstoppable. 530 ISK for the sellers and 460 for the buyers of Megasite. Not doing too great, and again at the tail end here it's just more bad news because I would say the stability in nullsec and just the increased supply availability of minerals in general, not enough destruction in the game to make anything happen there. So I would again understand people being very hesitant to say, yeah, I'm gonna start actually investing in minerals despite being in such low places price wise. Morphite finally is a bit of a different mineral, of course. It's not tied to the Tech 1 economy but to the Tech 2 economy, and that one is also playing with a 1-year low point. Sellers coming in at 7,775, buyers at 7,400. So again, Morphite, another week where you can buy it for less than 7,500 ISK. Historically speaking, that is a crazy good buy opportunity that, well, if you wait for something to happen in nullsec, couple of lost Tech 2 fleets, and you will see a jump up in price that can yield significant results in Morphite. If I were to invest in minerals, I have to be honest, I would gamble on Morphite before any of the others. After that, we have PI coming in at 1735. And let's go over these. PI in the last couple of weeks has been a bit of a mixed picture, where the non-fuel related items, and especially the advanced PI materials tied to structures, have been below average, and the fuel related PI materials have been above average, actually close to 1-year high points. So that's definitely two different aspects of the PI market. Here for the broadcast nodes, we can see a little bit of a comeback after reaching a 1-year low point of 1.9 million. On average, we are back to around 2.1, a little bit below that. 2.1 for the sellers and 2,065,000 for the buyers, so very narrow margin here. Some buyers coming in, a little bit of extra demand, pushing the price back to a just below average price for broadcast nodes. Construction blocks next are plateauing at just above 11,000 ISK, so we're talking 11,700 for the sellers, 10,800 for the buyers, but still looking at this chart, definitely below average. And then for consumer electronics, actually went very deep in early January to less than 11,000 ISK. If we look at my ticker here, consumer electronics, I actually bought some of those. I think that is going to turn out to be a good buy, but you need patience because still at this point, selling for 13,200 and buyers at 11,900, that is still a below average price. Yeah, the PI market, especially the non-fuel related PI market, is not popular at the moment. So personally, I am constantly keeping an eye on dips like this one that definitely break the averages by quite a bit, and then try to grab some cheap materials there for trades. Well, it's actually medium to long term. It could be a long time before you actually see a nice little spike in these, and thus take like a a 40-50% profit, which is mostly my aim when it comes to most of these trades. Now for coolants, fuel related, as I said, we've got a completely different chart. Look at that nice 1 year gain from 8,000 ISK now to 13,000 ISK on a couple of days. 13,500 for the sellers, 12,000 for the buyers. A lack of availability, I think, is pretty obvious with the sellers here, and I'm very surprised that this is still maintaining that situation, because all it takes is a gas planet to make coolant. It is really not that easy. There must be a lot of inertia to basically switching production from one good to the other right now. As a result, yeah, coolants definitely selling at a massive premium. I'm making that off of 2 gas planets, and it's a great time to be doing so. Enriched uranium also tied to fuels. You can see that we did have a little bit of a dip to average price of 12,000 ISK, but that didn't last long. Demand is back, and now we have data points at 15,000 ISK for the sellers, 13,600 for the buyers. Definitely, again, very strong prices. Nice result as well, 11,000 ISK to 15,000 ISK over the last year. Integrity response drones, then, that is more of the advanced PI stuff. So here we can clearly see most of the year 2.5 and up, and now here at the tail end definitely down and below average. 2.4 million for the sellers, 2.3 million for the buyers. Basically, if you're looking to make structures, or if you're looking for the very long horizon and you want to take that gamble on another line of big structures from CCP, this is the time to again spot the right times to buy these items. Mechanical parts doing strongly, not a very pronounced 1 year high point, but again from the year from 9,000 to almost 12,000 ISK is not bad. 11,500 for the sellers, 11,000 ISK for the buyers, still trading at a very good price. Nuclear reactors next here, finally some volatility. Actually, in the last couple of months, been super low on the lack of demand. Finally, a little bit of a spike to almost 110,000 ISK on one day. We reached that average. Now, it doesn't last very long, but what I'm personally hoping for is that this is the beginning of more volatility in the nuclear reactor market. You can also see the volatility in the volumes here. The more that happens, the better it is to trade in, because in the last couple of years, actually, nuclear reactors has shown lots of potential when it comes to trading. Sellers coming in at 91,500, buyers at 86,000, still a very wide margin. And potentially, with some more volatility, we'll actually see some more pronounced sell opportunities, I should say. Organic mortar applicators, yeah, advanced PI, more of that bad news, landing just above 1 million, 1.1 for the sellers, 1 million for the buyers. Again, lack of demand here is driving the price down, and yeah, it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to take that gamble. Robotics next, a little bit of an upswing, now trading a touch below average, which is actually unusual. Specialized PI material, but tied to fuels. So you would think that it might be more in line with coolants and enriched uranium, but no, a little bit below average here. 97,000 for the sellers and 95,000 for the buyers. Self-harmonizing power cores, again, advanced PI. So you get that same pattern, just above 2 million on the chart. Lack of buyers, quite obvious here again, I think. And then you've got the superconductors next, which is actually doing okay for the year, 12 to 13,000 ISK on average, and we're right in the middle of that. 12,700 for the sellers, 12,200 for the buyers. Definitely a lower margin between sellers and buyers than most other PI goods here. So not super stable. You can definitely see that the average prices move all over the place, but in general, a pretty decent PI material to make as well. Requires a storm planet, I think, though. Test cultures next, after trying to break out and get back to like 9-10,000 ISK on average. Well, doesn't last very long here. We're already back to the 8,000 ISK range, 8,100 for the sellers and less than 8,000 ISK for the buyers. Very narrow margin, but also again, the lack of demand in anything non-fuel related is quite obvious. And then we actually have the wetware mainframes here that are dipping down after a third leg down here, too close to 1 year low points. Sellers coming in at 2.2 million, buyers just above 2.1 million. Very narrow margin at a very low price here. Yeah, again, that advanced PI material, it really depends on your own plans, but looking at the longer term, looking at these charts, that is probably where the smart money might be going. at a slow pace, right? I don't think anyone is going to go crazy in the volumes here, but at a slow pace at the right time, I do think you've got investment opportunities in advanced PI materials. Next up, we have our advanced moon materials coming in at 25.35, 24.40 then. Yeah, I actually misread there. Let's get started with the carbonites as always, and unfortunately, yeah, I mean, this has replaced Tech 1 ships. Looking at the mineral market, the Tech 1 market is going to be decently boring indeed. I don't regret putting this segment in here, but we can also see that it is basically suffering from the same stability in nullsec here. You have these, and maybe also from the added stability that moon mining in 0.5 systems is going to add to advanced moon materials. So here, crystalline carbonite, goddammit, stuck at a less than average price, but not at a 1 year low point. And so selling for 168, buyers at 141. That's actually pretty low. Lack of demand again. But not yet super pronounced when it comes to its low point here. So I'd be hesitant to say get on that crystalline carbonite. Ferrite carbide next did dip to 150 ISK here, and below that volumes pretty decent, actually lower in the last couple of days, and the price going up. I think the investors have made their move. Sellers coming in at 169 and buyers coming in at 159. If you're looking at below 150 as basically the margin, then we are in that same pattern again. We are at a less than average price, but not at a super low price just yet. Next up, we have titanium carbide. Well, actually going to trying an average price. I would actually say that 200 to 250 should be the average price for titanium carbide. It's now selling for 222. Buyers coming in at 200 ISK. Yeah, that's around the normal price for titanium carbide. So definitely not the place where you want to sell. Do you want to buy? Well, perhaps if you manage to grab some at less than 150, then you've got a decent margin there. But other than that, it's again not in the best place for active trading either. And then tungsten carbide is definitely on a roll down, but I would need to see the chart touch that 175 mark before I would jump in. And we're not there yet. 193 for the sellers, 182 for the buyers. Then when it comes to the metamaterials, we start with photonic metamaterials. Same thing. I do personally regard the entire 1 year chart as the reference point here, and thus 15,000 ISK at the low end is actually my reference point. And then if you look at this entire chart, it's that same story. We're not at the low point, we're definitely below average, so I wouldn't make a move on that. Plasmonic metamaterials, same thing, touching 17,500 should be possible with it. So here we're getting close, but yeah, we're bouncing off of that, and buyers go back to 18,400. So that's unfortunately a bit too high for me, especially on that pressure in the last couple of months. Eventually, I think something is gonna break, and then you're actually gonna see a real opportunity. Non-linear metamaterials, exactly the same thing, 20K. Yeah, still above that, definitely not in the average range either. And then we get the terahertz metamaterials, which are bouncing up towards a more average price here, but not there yet. So still a bit below average, I would say. For the other advanced moon materials, we get a bit of a more mixed bag usually. So here, for instance, we get the fermionic condensates that did get pretty low, very close to a 1 year low point, but now recovering back to an average price, actually 100,000 ISK for the sellers, 99,000 actually, and then 96,000 for the buyers. Basically, the market is back on its average. Ferrogel, all right, bit of a takeoff in the last couple of days. Look where we come from. I wouldn't call it the low point. Again, I keep the entire chart in mind when it comes to looking for those low points, and then trying to get back to the average, but still a little bit below that. That is definitely in the same pattern. Fullerite, same thing. Did manage to reach that 1 year low point in October, and since then, well, staying in that less than average range. Hypersynaptic fibers dipping again, but look at the early chart. I think that we're still in for worse times if supplies continue to put that pressure on this price. You can clearly see that in the last 6 months or so, we're constantly testing lower low points. We're constantly having people that do invest on those low points with these increased volumes. But yeah, it keeps coming. The stability is still there for more supply than the market needs. And I personally think we can go even lower. Nanotransmitters, yeah, maybe this one could be seen as being on its average price, but still not the best place, in my opinion, to be trading for this item. And then phenolic composites, that is interesting. That's like 10 days where we are actually stuck on that 1 year low point. Look at that 20-day moving average, actually just going straight through that 2000 ISK mark. Sellers coming in at less than 2000 ISK, buyers at 1910. Give that a bit more pressure, and we're seeing this drop to 1800, and then you do have a nice chart 1 year low point where I would say, yeah, definitely try to grab some of that. Ceramic fibers next, same pattern, right? 400, that was a great little opportunity here, but very pronounced as well, and easy to take profits in the next month or so. But now at that 450 range here, that pressure again, nope, too early in my book. That's basically the situation in the advanced moon materials. Unless a real shakeup comes, which might come from a war, which might also come from CCP, although I don't think so. It's been too close basically since we had the rework. I think that the pressure is going to mount, and that eventually you are going to see more of these types of charts where the camel's back does get broken, and where the price looks very interesting, even looking back at the entire chart. And that's what I would be waiting for myself. Take two ships next, coming in at 30.55. Let's take a look at these then. Definitely also trading below average. The time to grab the cheap Take Two ships, I think, is now, if again you keep a close enough eye on the market. The Aries coming in at 27.7 million, and look at the lack of buyers. You're buying them for less than 26 million and not a lot of interest. If we do go to the player-owned trade hubs, we get a little bit more interest, but the price is basically the exact same thing. So the Aries definitely not in too much demand right now. The Basilisk, that is very nice. That is what I personally like about the Take Two market. You do have that potential in volatility. It's very tricky to actually grab it at the moment, but that was very nice. A 1 year low point at 210 million ISK, and then 1 month later 320 million ISK. That's how you want to see your trade happens. So if the Basilisk, if you still manage to grab some cheap ones, this is still definitely a good time to try and sell them. The Cerberus is also jumping up a little bit, maybe in the expectation of the next event. I don't really have enough information about that one, and if it is selling for 250, yeah, that is definitely a normal average price basically for the Cerberus at the moment. Next up we've got the Crow, and well, that is one of those opportunities where you might want to take advantage and grab some cheap crows, especially if you want to use them. 26.5 for the sellers, 24 million ISK for the buyers. Grabbing crows for less than 25 million ISK is definitely pretty damn cheap. Will it be easy? I personally don't think so. The market, I think the volumes will be quite bad. Yeah, those are super low, but know that if you're lucky enough, and if you don't go too crazy with the volumes, I think 14 and 12, that's a little bit too aggressive, but try to grab a couple and then you might make some good deals. Honestly though, when it comes to the Take Two ship market, I would always buy stuff that personally I would have use for as well. Next up we've got the Guardian. Again, the logistics cruiser do seem to have done quite nicely here. Look at that, you could have bought these for 220, currently still selling at 250 million ISK, with a high point here coming in at, what would that be, 300 and even more million ISK as well. The Heretic is down to a less than average price, bouncing off a little bit basically off the 60 million mark. And the buyers are coming in at 58. Again, look at the lack of demand in these ships. It is quite pronounced. But what that gives you is that potentially you've got these nice volatile periods when all of a sudden there is a bit more demand. But it's also very tricky to make trades in this one. The volumes are really low, and that is, I think, what you have to be most careful of. Try to find the right ships to buy at the right time. Sure, but don't buy too many of them because it's going to be very difficult to get rid of them. Next up here we've got the hounds staying below 30 million ISK, but not at a low point just yet. 29 million for the sellers, 27 for the buyers. It's definitely a cheap price for the hound, but it's not the best price we've seen. Then we've got the Ishtar staying below average as well here, selling for 246, buyers coming in at 230. The Manticore tried to get back to decently above 30 million ISK price range, but driven back down to 30 million for the sellers and 29 million for the buyers. Next up, we've got the Munin. Nothing too special to report here either. Definitely a pretty low price. Nemesis did stay super low, below 25 million for almost a month, and is now breaking out of that. 28 million for the sellers, still 22.8 million for the buyers. The lack of demand is quite obvious. Now we've got the Oneros back above 200 million ISK, but here the really bad news, of course, these volumes are really low, 204 for the sellers. Well, if you bought the right ones, then I think you can still make a good deal out of that. But again, with most days 13 being sold, it's not going to be easy. Then we have the Purifier that is also coasting to a less than average price, but not yet its low point. Saber was next, definitely at a less than average price at the moment. Sellers coming in at 69 million, buyers coming in at 66.6 million. This is actually a really interesting ship in my opinion, and I have tried to grab some at certain prices. I just never succeeded in that, and that actually surprises me. You can clearly tell the pressure, right? You can clearly tell that we are talking super low prices, but they're very aggressive in these buy orders. People are trying to snag these Sabers very cheaply, and I don't blame them. One big fight in nullsec, and the first things to go down, it actually pretty big numbers, are the interdictors. They're always primaries, they're always problems that need to be gotten rid of, and so as a result these are good investments, but it takes a bit of effort in order to grab the really cheap ones. Then we've got the Scimitar that's actually still trading below average, and then we've got the Stiletto that is doing the same thing here. Again, you can see that pressure because of the lack of demand in a lot of these Tech 2 ships. So the savvy investors, I do think, keep an eye on that, but be very, very careful when it comes to buying too many of these at one time. Next up, we have the Tech 3 market, 3640. There we go. As always, we'll start with the destroyers, and the Confessor is holding on to its 40 million price points despite this massive increase in volumes all of a sudden on a single day. Must be said, it's only a single day. That basically has not moved the price all that much. Selling for 40 million, buyers coming in at 37 million. You do have 180 units here, 67 units here, so a slight increase in volumes, but nothing that the market is unable to absorb, I think, and so this looks quite okay. It's quite stable. The Hecate back down to less than 45 million, heading for 40 million as well. So 42 million for the sellers. This is interesting. 36 million for the buyers. Player on trade hubs though, that's where they go back to that 40 million range. So yeah, the Hecate, bit of an anomaly in the sense that the competition is happening in perimeter and not in GTA 4.4 when it comes to the buyers market. Looking at these volumes, well, we are coming from a high point of 50 million, so a bit more interest, of course, is being shown, a bit more competition as well, and so you do have quite a few more Hecates available on the market. But as long as it lands on 40 million ISK, and then you don't still see hundreds and hundreds of them coming on the market, I think we're still okay. Basically a well-supplied market so far. The Jackdaw is actually climbing, currently selling for 48 million ISK, buyers coming in at 43.7 million, and here the availability is down all of a sudden, so we can definitely expect more Jackdaw supply coming in the upcoming days and weeks to take advantage of that higher price, which should put some pressure off of the Confessor and the Hecate, for instance, and thus bring all of them in line to that probably 40, maybe a touch above that million price mark. And then we finally have the Svepel that is now landing at 35 million ISK. It is the least popular one, 36 million for the sellers and 35 million for the buyers. And as the least popular one, you still have 100 here, but other than that, the volumes are definitely manageable. So I would say for the tactical destroyer market, we've got a healthy market that is well supplied, a bit a bit more than I would say even in the last couple of months or so, but the logic is there. On any opportunities like what the Heggate had a couple of weeks ago, you see more supply incoming, which then eventually creates a gap in some of the others, and now the Jackdaw is up, so expect more supplies to come in here, maybe a little bit of increased prices and decreased availability in the other popular tactical destroyers. Great trade opportunities, not really, to be honest. I would have the patience. This is now, I think, the second and possibly third year in a row where during the summer for Tech 3 ships there was this very definite pattern of massive oversupply, 1 year low points, and very prolonged buy opportunities, which even now, if you had bought at the low points in July, September, you would still be making quite a good trade and getting some profits out of that. So that's what I would personally do. Hold on for the Tech 3 market, keep an eye on it, but focus on the summer. If that same pattern shows up again, definitely make a move. For the cruisers, always a bit trickier. Here is the Loki, for instance, going back to 250 million ISK. So this is of course something that is still actively flown a lot in Nosek. I think the Tech 3 cruiser doctrine is definitely something that is flown quite a lot, and as a result, well, you've got not great availability, and so you can have these sudden moves on increased volumes when a big Nosek alliance or something like that decides that it's time for another Loki fleet. And so in general, these feel decently expensive from time to time, and then they generally dive back down to an average price pretty quickly. The Loki is definitely up a little bit, 236 million for the sellers to 14 for the buyers. Then we have the Proteus that is basically flat, the least popular one, unfortunately at 170 million, 157 for the buyers. But look at the availability here. 16, 10, and a couple of 1-2s, couple more 10s. This is nothing crazy. This is definitely where the price can stay and maintain, where the market can maintain its price range. And then for the Loki, you also have, well, 2s, 15, 12, 10, nothing too crazy. This is definitely pretty doable for the market to at least maintain its price range. But of course, from time to time, when you do have volume increases because of the need for some tactical cruisers in big volumes, you do get a price spike all of a sudden. Not very trade-worthy in my opinion. Those gaps do get plugged very quickly. So that was Legion. Actually, skip that one. Same thing right here. Look at that. Volumes went down a little bit. Prices though, pretty damn stable. Volumes go back up for a couple of days, and you do have a price spike to 198 million for the sellers, 162 for the buyers, and availability down a little bit, but you can see that there is still enough to keep this market stable. And then finally we have the Tengu that is basically flat at its current price range of around 180 million ISK, and here availability is the same thing, 11, 10, 12, not a lot. So any big push for some Tengus is going to drive the price up, but nothing unreasonable. Either availability is okay, and so here the Tech 3 market at the moment, that's its story. I think pretty stable, well supplied, but definitely not oversupplied either, and basically at the whims of big buyers to drive the price back up, but that doesn't last very long in my opinion. And then that brings me to the extra product this week, coming in at 42.40. We're gonna take a look at the mining ships. I'm actually a little bit curious to see what those are doing. It gives us a little bit of a touch again on Tech 1, Tech 2, and then maybe even a capital ships here. So let's take a look at these. I think we're talking mining barges and Coveter, Procure, Retriever. That ought to be Tech 1. So Tech 1 Coveter, yeah, definitely not at its low points, but still trading well below average. Sellers at less than 20 million ISK, buyers at 18 million ISK. Availability, that doesn't feel crazy. So that actually doesn't feel massively oversupplied. Procure actually diving down to a 1 year low point for the smallest one, 13 million for the sellers, 12.3 million for the buyers. Availability up a little bit, probably too much for the market to handle. And then we have the Retriever. Ooh, look at that, all of a sudden a volume increase and so right now selling for 22 million ISK. Slight opportunity in the retriever because of a lack of availability. Buyers coming in at 15.9 million. I personally do think that this will get plugged very quickly by the Tick 1 industrialist here. Something like that doesn't last very long, but quite unusual to see the retriever spike up like that and on that sudden retriever interest. But the picture is pretty clear here. Very clearly, Tick 1 ships are under pressure because of the super low mineral prices. On the exhumer front, let's start with the smallest one. Here is the Skiff, under pressure, heading for 230 million ISK, 234 for the sellers, 217 for the buyers. So again, availability is okay, nothing crazy, but the demand isn't that great, and as a result, we are trading below average. For the Machina, we're even trading at a one-year low point, 232 million for the sellers, 209 for the buyers. You're buying Machinas for less than 210 million ISK. Get that on the chart. That is here. If you're looking for another Tech 2 ship to actually invest in, the Machina, considering this chart, definitely does make sense in my book. Then we've got the Hulk, also just coming off of one-year low point of around 280 million ISK, 292 for the sellers, but 268 for the buyers. And look at the volumes there, quite a lot lower than availability. So as a result, here the Tech 2 ships are trading below average, and the Machina, I mean, that's a serious decrease. That's actually some volatility on the downtrend on volumes, which ought to mean lots of supply coming in. I would say, yeah, if I'd have to take one gamble this week, I'd almost say grab a couple of Machinas. Who knows when a Hulkageddon comes in or something like that, and then you've got some Tech 2 ships to sell that you bought on the cheap. And then the final one that we can check is, of course, the Orca, which is, I think, actually classified as a capital ship. But it is Tick 1, and here, yeah, more, well, bad news if you're looking to make or get a lot of ISK out of producing Orcas. Of course, if you're looking to buy one, this is pretty good. 603 million for the sellers, 560 million for the buyers. One-year low point for the Orca as well. And basically, I think that is the story. In the Tick 1 ship market, well, not a lot of people are producing it anymore. Margins are already super thin, but it's capital and super capital availability that is increasing, and thus those prices are definitely still going lower and lower in the game in general. And the Orca is just showing that as well on its availability charts. You should cost well, let's say in the first half of the year, you still have to pay 750 million ISK for an Orca. Now you're paying less than 600 million ISK. And that is going to be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, I'll see you next time.